the Detroit Pistons, Wayne State, Flagstar, McLaren, and B&R Consultants. Now, a little applause. We have some DPS students who will be here momentarily. They're kind of stuck in traffic, as I'm told, but they will be here shortly. They come from Cass Tech. They're all interested in becoming entrepreneurs. And when someone asked, did they want to attend, they had waiting line of people wanting to hear from Dan. So they'll be here shortly. And to make their visit here possible, I wanted to give a shout out to PVS Chemicals, GM, and DADA. Also, DPS Foundation President and CEO Carrie Mitchell, who helped facilitate this. So again, thank you so much. And now I would like to ask Mike Bicker, president of PNC Bank in Detroit, Southeast Michigan, one of our two presenting sponsors, to say a few words. Mike has put a pedal to the floor in impacting the community in Detroit, his hometown. As an example, just a couple of weeks ago, they gifted a home to a deserving American hero, Army Private Isaac Bickers, who moved from Arizona to Michigan, increasing our population and kicking off the holidays. Yes, one person at a time is all it takes. Mike's also an alum of Detroit Public Schools, grew up on the west side of Detroit. Please welcome Mike Bickers.
I gotta admit, I didn't know about this part, but that's okay. Yeah. Surprise, surprise. I didn't even get a chance to get to hair and makeup. Good morning, everybody. Happy holidays. Thank you for being here. Just excited to hear from Mr. Gilbert. It's a pleasure to see all of you and to spend time fellowshipping around partnership and just keeping Southeast Michigan healthy and strong. That's the most important thing. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mike. Henry Ford Health is our other presenting sponsor. Henry Ford has a really interesting history. It's been an intricate part of our region for over 100 years. The healthcare provider also has a deep and important connection to our speaker and his family. To talk about it, I'd like to invite Henry Ford Health's Dr. Stephen Kielkanis to come tell us about it.
Good morning, everyone. The enduring and indelible legacy of Dan and Jennifer Gilbert needs no introduction or embellishment. The impact is felt far and wide around the world. But we've often said that there's no great American city without a world-class health system as a partner. Detroit is, again, a great American city. Henry Ford is proud to partner in developing the future of health, and I have the honor of being the CEO of Henry Ford Hospital and the medical group, and my proudest honor is actually being one of Nick Gilbert's neurosurgeons. And the journey that we've been on together, I think, tells an incredible story of what the Gilbert family is made of, because their recent gift to us and to the city, and really to our community and the world, is making a huge difference, nearly $400 million. You may have heard of our new project downtown called Destination Grand. It's a play on words, destination because it's a long journey with a great outcome, but it's a destination for health, for hope, for those who need it the most. Grand because it's a grand aspiration, but it's also on Grand Boulevard in the city where we never left, in the city where we love. And as a result, because of the Gilbert's gift, we now have a new partner called Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. It's the #1 rehabilitation facility in the world, making people walk again and talk again after stroke and after spinal cord injury. And in honor of their son, we now will have an enhanced research facility, state-of-the-art, world-class, looking at neurofibromatosis cures and also cures for rare genetic disease. In addition to all of this, however, the Gilberts, because they spent days on end, weeks in the hospital, in the ICU, they knew that they had the resources to provide for Nick and their family, but they saw everybody else going through that process. And in addition to their generosity, they made millions and millions of dollars available for a fund to provide for families with financial toxicity because of disease and health care, not to pay medical bills, but to provide for food bills and for rent and for gas and for help for those who need it the most. And I just think that that is a lesson that we can all learn from and be inspired by, because as we build this tower, it's going to change the skyline of Detroit, taller than the Fisher Building. We hope it changes the health line of Detroit, as we say, but the Gilberts are the heart and soul of making this all happen, and it's just such an honor to honor them today. So thank you and good morning.
for the video. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming the man of the hour and our guest this morning, entrepreneur, philanthropist, hometown hero to so many, which I heard from people as they heard you were going to be here, how much they admired things that you are doing and continue to do. Mr. Dan Gilbert. So Dan, it's been a while since you and I talked. How are things?
It was pretty good. I did get hair, but no makeup. I was going to get my hair right.
Mike? Mike?
The mic's not working.
Oh. I think they might have been employed Matt Ishbia. What do you think?
I never met him, so I don't know.
We'll leave that alone. All right. So let me go back then. So it's been a while since you and I visited.
Yeah.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. You want me to restate my first thing because it was important? So I said I did get hair, but no makeup.
Okay.
I got to say the line twice.
Hey, once was not enough. That's,
Yeah.
you know.
And
So,
I love being at the Townsend Hotel. I got married here. My wife is here, Jennifer, myself, 28 years ago.
oh. And the impact that you both have had on this community from a business standpoint, philanthropic, education, it's just amazing. But people may not know that this is not the path you originally were on. When you first got out of Michigan State University, you were... All right, and this side's maize and blue, right? That's how we're going to do this, okay. You started as a sports journalist and were tending to do journalism until you realized you don't get paid. So smart move, you changed gears and you got into the mortgage industry after delivering pizzas in high school and college, saving up $5,000 to start your first mortgage company. My long-winded question is this. Did you know back then you were going to have this kind of success?
I don't think you think that far ahead. I mean, to me, I always thought maybe a year or two ahead. I think it's hard to say where you're going to be 20 years from now, or even 10 or 5 years from now. So
Yeah.
I would say I did not have thoughts either way. I just kind of put my head down and went to work. And the pizza delivering was my favorite. I think I have the record. It's the unofficial record of pizza delivering 78 deliveries in one night. And
Wait.
when pizza guys come in today, I always ask them, what's your record? And they usually go 40s, 50s, and then I go, I used to deliver pizzas. They say, what was your record? I say 78, and they go, oh, you're him. So they know. They all know, you know.
So when you and I first talked years ago, you told me that story, and I thought that was
Yeah.
amazing. But I recently heard the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey used to say, about that time. And that is that you and your pal David Carroll, who I think David's here. David, you here? He's here somewhere. Okay. Oh, there he is, over there. Your pal David Carroll and others were making pizzas in David's parents' home's kitchen and at your parents' home. I'm told it was successful until the health department found out about it, shut you down, and then the business kind of fizzled out. My question is, did you ever think about going into the pizza business? Because I know Denise is here. Pizza and Detroit go hand in hand.
Well, I know we got enough great pizza guys in this town, so I don't think so. But we bought Chef Boyardee, Chef Boyardee, is that how you say it? Pizzas.
Yes.
And we made them in our family's kitchens, and we put flyers in all the mailboxes. We had our little brothers deliver on bikes. But it is true that the health department called us and said we're not allowed to do that. And the zoning commission said we weren't zoned for that, so.
So was there possible jail time ahead here if you kept on? Is
No,
that?
that happened in college, but that's,
Well, see what we're learning here today? I mean, boy. So let's talk about Detroit here. You moved your headquarters to Detroit for Quicken Loans and other companies, TitleSource, which collectively is a Rocket Companies, a bunch of companies, from Livonia to Detroit in 2010. Why was being in Detroit so important?
well, Carol, it wasn't just Livonia. So we were spread out in the suburbs, and it was not easy to do. When you have buildings in Farmington Hills, Livonia, Troy, We wanted to be in one campus, one area. And when you're driving down Detroit, and at the time you see all these beautiful buildings that were mostly empty, I said, wow, what a great idea to be in the center of an urban core, and it's like a campus. You get the best of both worlds. So we decided, let's give it a shot, and Peter Carmanos kept calling me up, trying to get me to move in. He didn't want to be the only one down there, according to his pitch. It's not really true, but there were others there, but he said, we're the only ones in our building. I'll lease you 3 or 4 floors, start with that. So we did, we started with that. When we got down there, we brought 1,400 people at the beginning, but we had a lot more still in the suburbs, and we had to get more space, and those buildings were available. So we went ahead and purchased those and moved everybody down. And since everybody's been down, it really is an energy-filled place that people are creative, and it is true, being in an urban core has a better feel, at least from where we were looking out at asphalt parking lots. Now we get to look at our windows and see sports teams and beautiful buildings and the hustle and bustle of the city. And our people really enjoy and like that. And they're all involved in the community. I say all, I really mean almost every single person. And we're up to like close to 20,000 people downtown. They're all involved in some community effort, and that makes them feel good. And makes it a better city. And we also, the biggest thing is to attract young talent. That's the biggest probably challenge in my view of Detroit and the city and the suburbs for that matter. We have to keep our kids at home, and then secondly, we got to recruit other kids from other areas. It's such a shame we pay billions of dollars to send these kids to Michigan State, Michigan, Wayne State, and others. In New York and Chicago and other cities are the benefit of our investment. It's crazy. So we got to keep them home, and the way we're going to keep them home is by having a vibrant, attractive urban city and great suburbs, which for the most part the suburbs are doing well, although I was surprised to see some of the traffic here coming in. Used to it in Detroit, but I'm not used to it out here. So it's very important for everybody, and you know, even a couple of my kids have a short-term stay in New York right now, and I give them a lot of heat. So I started calling it Old York to them. But we've got to keep our talent here, and we're able to do it through a big internship program that we started as well. So we bring in about 1,500 kids a year. Sounds like a lot, but it becomes our recruiting place. I mean, I'd say probably 80% of those kids end up with a job with us somewhere. And they all are excited, and they're all young and energized, and they all teach us how to use the new technology. It's really good. So keeping our kids here and attracting other kids is one of our big things. And those 1,500 people kids represent 200 universities across the United States. So think about that. People want to come to Detroit. They do. Once you get them here and show them around, they get it. It's hard to do it on the phone because there's a reputation lag that's from decades in the past, but when you bring them here and show them Detroit, and then you maybe drive them up to Birmingham a little bit and show them around, I mean, they're bought in. They're bought in, so we just got to get them here to visit.
Has being located in Detroit made it easier or more challenging for your company?
Well, I think it's made it easier because, as I was saying before, we can attract the talent. I mean, it's just easier to attract talent. And also, this generation does want to be involved in the community, I think, more than previous ones. So when they see all the things we're doing in the community, that's a selling point. And they like the fact of being in beautiful buildings, and they move around. They don't just stay in one building. You can go to conference meetings in other buildings, and some of the leaders like to take their teams around to different places so they get exposed to all these buildings and be able to be part of it all. So that's real important. And also, I think it's the ideas and the creativity when so many people are together in a bustle and hustle and energy-filled city is just, it's so much better than being at home, first of all, or being in an office stuff somewhere that's, I say asphalt parking lot, we just had to see it. It was relation to us as a business. You could look out your windows and just see, you know, miles of asphalt, not miles, but thousands of feet of asphalt. And I always tell this one story. There was a kid at University of Michigan who was 22 years old, and He interviewed with several of our people, and they really loved him, and they wanted to hire him, and they couldn't get him for some reason. Probably wanted to go to New York or something. So I said, let me meet with him. So I meet with him in my office. This is in Livonia. And I asked him why he's not going to work here. And he said, come here to the window. So he took me to the window. He said, look at this out here. There's an apartment building over there. There's a Costco there. There's Max and Irma's over here. He said, I just don't want to drive everywhere. I don't want to live in that apartment, go to Costco, get some food, go to Max and Irma's for dinner, and come home back to my apartment. And then in the morning, walk across 300 yards of asphalt to my car. So it really hit me when he told me that this generation wants to be in a place that they can walk the streets, they can become involved in cultural things, they can be in a city that's diverse, that's exciting, and where they can play a part of it. So that was an example that hit me really hard. And I think that those of you who moved down there or saw part of it, or part of your companies moved down, I think you know what I'm talking about. Those of you that haven't, we're going to get you. Okay?
Yeah. So you and Jennifer, excuse me, just donated $400 million, close to, excuse me, for 2 health facilities, a 72-bed rehab center for stroke patients, which is part of Henry Ford Health and managed by the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago, and the Nick Gilbert Neurofibromatosis Research Institute with Henry Ford and Michigan State Health. Tell us about them, and what do you hope each one accomplishes?
Well, the rehab center with Henry Ford and Shirley Ryan, and we're excited about both of them, but that one came out of my personal experience. I went to Chicago to Shirley Ryan to rehab the first, 8 weeks or 9 weeks after I had the stroke in 2019, and I realized what a great facility that was. They won something like 33 years in a row, the best rehab facility in the world by some of these magazines that rank those things. Maybe you guys know the name of it, I don't. Maybe it was Rehab Today magazine, I don't know. I'm just looking at you.
U.S. News and World Report.
U.S. News and World Report, okay. Is that a good one?
That's a good one. Let me write that down. Can I quote you on?
Okay.
So you're.
So they were a great facility, and I was able to get great help for about 9 weeks. But while I was there, I noticed there were a lot of people who couldn't afford it or had to leave after like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. I was there probably a little bit longer than that. But the insurance companies today just don't cover that much rehab hours. And so we have to find a way to rehabilitate people in a great facility that they can get better and that they can afford, or they can at least get supplemented in some way, which we're willing to do. And we have great partners. Henry Ford, as you heard earlier, a great partner, and they're doing a hell of a lot for the city with their investment. And then Michigan State University, say it again. Oh, great. Yeah, is also partnering with us there. And Shirley Ryan, of course, they're going to open up. This is their second facility in the country. So they don't have them anywhere else. We were able to convince them. That's another situation where I just said, while I had the stroke and was in bed, I kept trying to convince these people, we need to open up one of these in Detroit, not just for me. And they said, Detroit? I said, yeah, Detroit. And they were skeptical, but when you get them here on the ground and they walk around, they really fell in love with Detroit and said, okay. And so we're funding that. And then our son was born with this genetic disease 27 years ago called neurofibromatosis. My wife and myself never heard of it until the doctor told us what it was. And that's the case with most people who have a child who has this. 1 out of 3,000 births in the world, doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually common for a neuro disease, are born with this disease. And the disease can be devastating, as it was for our son. It causes tumors on the nerves anywhere on the body. His were in his brain. He struggled for 26 years, almost his whole life, and unfortunately passed away in May. So in honor of him and his life and the way he lived, and he lived a good life and never let the disease keep him down, and he is an example for all. But this is a research center that's going to focus on neurofibromatosis. I'll just call it NF, it's an easier way to refer to it. And we're not just going to research neurofibromatosis or NF, we're going to research other diseases, genetic diseases as well, and try to bring in researchers from all over the world. which the Gilbert Family Foundation is already doing. So we've got researchers coming who are interested in the city too. So everything, the medical community, the research community, the business community, the city, the foundations, everybody's got to work together to attract talent. It's all about talent, in my opinion, as I said 10 times today already. So it doesn't matter where they come from. We don't care as long as they come here. And we've got to be in the game. We weren't in the game for decades. We lost decades. You guys all probably have children or brothers or sisters or relatives that moved to different cities. I think it's become a badge of honor for some parents to brag that their kid is in New York or Chicago. We got to change that. And I think it's real important that this time, we got to start here with the kids that are coming out of our universities here. Is that long enough for you? Okay.
It's your world, you know. So your son, Nick, inspired so many people. He dealt with his illness with such grace, and people were inspired by him, people who knew him, people who read of him, or maybe saw him on the news or what have you. What did you learn from him?
Well, as I said earlier, he didn't let that disease keep him down. He just kept going and made everybody laugh and made everybody comfortable around him. And if you met him, you loved him, and he loved you. He made the doctors laugh. He made us laugh. He made his friends laugh. He was just a great kid. And he actually had this dream of a sports bar in downtown Detroit. His friends referred to him as Gilly, so we're calling it Gilly's. We're continuing with the vision he had. And there's a sports bar that's going to open on Woodward, hopefully in the spring, called Gilly's. We invite you to visit that. It'll be open for the NFL draft, which is in April. And that's another good thing that we got here.
Yeah. So can you tell us about Gillies? I know when Nick envisioned it, he wanted to be a different kind of sports bar. So can you share a little bit about what's going to be different?
Well, he wanted it accessible, of course. That was big important to him. He wanted just a fun place where people could watch games, have a drink if they want, and meet friends and just relax and be in the city. I mean, there are sports bars in the city, a handful of them, but this one is going to be a little bit bigger and we think a little bit more interesting. So when he was sick, I heard him on the phone dictating to people how he wanted the floors, the ceilings, the kinds of materials. I mean, he was all over it. So we'll see how it comes out. I think it's going to be great. We got a great team working on it, and it should be here in the spring.
In time for the draft.
Yes.
So Architectural Digest just described the Book Tower project of yours as one of the 11th most beautiful repurposed building in the world. You purchased it in 2015 and converted it from office space to housing and hospitality, spending over $400 million on this renovation. When I last left, it had 229 luxury apartments, a hotel, restaurant, rooftop bar. What is it about that particular building that has so many people taking notice of it?
Well, it's just a beautiful building. Louis Kemper was the architect. He's a big-name architect from way back. But it's like an old-time building that you saw in the 1920s along Washington Boulevard. If you haven't been in that building, I really encourage you to go in it, because we preserved a lot of the old structure and put in some new structure and try to merge them together so it didn't take away from each other. It's got some great restaurants in there, French restaurant on the grade level. It's got, on the 14th floor, you have this outdoor deck that's sort of indoor-outdoor. And getting on that deck was really, you're going to enjoy it. You get to see the whole skyline at night. We're trying to make our buildings and our places an experience, not just a place you go and go to work or go to a restaurant. That's what we work on. And if people have a great experience, they'll want to come back, they'll tell other people. So that building allowed us to create an experience. It's got apartments in it. It's got a Roost Hotel in it. And the Roost Hotel, if you haven't heard, that's an extended stay hotel, but you can stay for a shorter period if you want, so feel free. Their only competitor is the Shinola Hotel, which we also worked on, and also was old buildings that we put together and try to preserve. So it also has some very good event space. So the next wedding you're involved with, you're going to want to take a look at that. Carroll. I told you I was going to sell up here later. You know,
Okay, David Carroll told me that early on about how many entrepreneur businesses you both started way back when.
yeah.
So, the Hudson skyscraper coming to life in the central business district, there's talks, and I've been reading about it, having condos and a hotel and office space. So I guess the question is, can you give us an update of what is going to be there, what it's going to look like?
Well, the Hudson's building is a very important building to this city and to all the people whose parents and grandparents visited it and they visited. Everyone remembers Hudson's who's older than probably 55 years old. Under 55, I'm not so sure. But they definitely remember it. They remember going there with their parents or grandparents. They remember Santa Claus. They remember Christmas. They remember the flag on the building. So it's a very important building. We wanted to make sure we took our time with it, which we did. And in your question, you pretty much gave the update. It's going to have 90 luxury condos at the top. It's going to have a world-class, I call it world-class, but that word sort of bugs me a lot. I think it's overused. It's going to have a really great hotel in it. That's in other cities. You've heard of it, I'm sure, and it's very exciting because the operator of that hotel is already started to build it, and we've been through it, and it's really starting to take shape. It's going to have some great office space, about 400,000 feet, and it's going to have some good retail on the grade level as well. So that's it. It's a mixed-use place. It's got two buildings, a tower and then kind of a block building. Also has event space, which you can pitch against the book and see where you get a better deal.
So for all the journalists back here covering this right now, if they were to say that's going to be a world-class facility, that would be okay with you then?
I mean, I'd be okay with it once or twice.
Okay, so I'd be sure. So
Everything's world-class. If you read the papers, the speeches people talk about world, it's overused.
yeah.
It's deflated. The word's deflated now because it's so used. If you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
Okay, good.
So Bedrock owns a portfolio of over 100 properties totaling 19 million square feet. It's the largest real estate partner in downtown Detroit with a very strong presence in Cleveland. So this is kind of a different question, but what's the difference, or how does Detroit and Cleveland, how do they compare?
Well, they're similar cities. They have similar histories, and they're both on Lake Erie for the most part. So we're very Lake Erie centric. That doesn't mean we're going to Buffalo. That's pushing it a little bit. But what's funny is when people from Cleveland come here and walk around, they're like, man, I hope Cleveland could be like Detroit. And when people in Detroit go to Cleveland, it's the same thing. I hope Detroit can get like Cleveland. So the grass is always greener on the other side of Lake Erie. But I think the city is pretty much the same. I think in Detroit, people are a little bit more secure about their city and believe. And Cleveland still has that, oh, we're just Cleveland thing. But I think they're getting over that finally. Maybe finally getting a championship helped them. It was only 56 years or something. So, but similar cities overall, Carol.
So with, I've asked you this, every time we talk, I ask you this when we sit down and saying, what's the game plan? You have what's the game plan for all of these buildings? Is there a game plan?
Well, I think we're executing it right now. You're seeing it. We're rehabbing them, or we're building them from scratch, trying to have experiences, trying to create space that's going to attract more people to live and work and play in these spaces, and make sure that we pay attention or pay heed, I don't know if that's a word either, to the past, and make sure we don't just demolish them and build new buildings. We're going to definitely put new materials in them, but we want to make sure we preserve the history of these buildings.
With the post-pandemic workplace, a lot of companies, employees are working at home now. There's not as many people in the office, hybrid situations. A lot of your buildings are employment type places where companies would be locating amid this changing sea of workplace, which is dominating everybody in this room. If you were to talk to every company executive here about what's going on, it's changing. How are you adjusting your game plan with all of these buildings and what you might be like as you repurpose and do other things?
Well, obviously we want people to work in buildings, right?
Right?
The concept of having everybody work from home can work for short periods of time, in my opinion, but not over the long term. You need people together, you need them to collaborate, you need them to feel each other's energy, and you need them to work on projects together. I mean, you can do it a little bit from home, but I don't think you can do it long term from home. Now, during the pandemic, we did some of that, not all of it. So about half of our people were in homes. But since that time, I think we're about 75% are working in the buildings, and maybe they get a day or something a week at home. I mean, some businesses just can't do it. Henry Ford can't do it. And there's other places that just can't do it if they have to be
Yeah.
in front of their customers. And the mortgage business was probably made for doing it at home. Who cares? You don't want to go sit in front of somebody to do a mortgage. That's for sure. It's bad enough the way it is already. I think all companies are struggling with this right now, as you mentioned. And like you said, some go hybrid, some are kind of hardcore about it and say, we don't want our people in at home at all. I don't know if that's going to work. And I don't know if you can say everybody's going to be at home at all times. That, as I said earlier, that doesn't work either. So most companies that I talk to are taking some form of a hybrid, either some of their people or some of their people split, or some people can't split depending on the function. I think companies will go through that for the next few years. Hopefully we get past this era and everybody gets back in buildings in downtown Detroit, of course. So, next question, Carol.
Check. So this week there was a press conference talking about the 2024 NFL Draft. I know Claude Molinari of Visit Detroit is here somewhere, and I know that you and others, many others in this room, were involved in helping to pitch that, to bring that, the NCAA, and so all this sort of stuff. How important are these sporting events to Detroit?
Well, I think they're huge. The NFL Draft, they think 100,000 people come to that, because people from every city who has a football team, a lot of them come to the draft. And that's great for two reasons. It's great because they're here, but it's great because they can go back to their city and tell everybody how great Detroit is. So those things are really helpful. Same thing with the golf outing that we put in, Detroit Golf Club, same thing. You got to have these things in a city. You got to have conferences in a city,
Yeah.
which we're hoping to make Hudson's one of the conference centers of the area with their event space. You got to have weddings in the city too, because weddings you get a lot of out-of-town people. Then they go back and tell their friends and family about Detroit. But Detroit's getting a ton of people visiting it anyway, just with the existing infrastructure and the existing attractions. I don't want to quote the numbers because I'm not sure I've got them right, but millions of people a year come to Detroit for many things. So if we just keep adding these sports events or whatever we add, conferences, they'll just keep increasing it.
The Rocket Mortgage Classic, when you first raised the idea with the PGA of having this event, did it take a hard sell job to get them, to work it out so it was able to be held there?
You know, it's always a hard sell, I would say, but you know, when you have the community involved and you have the Detroit Sports Commission behind you and our businesses and other businesses, auto companies, everybody get together, you can win these battles. But you got to work together to do it. And it's really been successful, and it's raised a lot of money too for Detroit Connect, which is to make sure all Detroiters can connect on the internet and also have the equipment that they can connect. That's been a big problem, the digital divide. So that was where the community part of that revenue was aimed for, and also tens of thousands of people came every day to watch that thing. I watched it too, but watching golf, you can only do it for so long, you know, on TV anyway. So,
Yes, this is a true point. Having spent many hours with my dad growing up where he'd be watching PGA event, like, it's so slow,
did you watch bowling on Saturday?
once in a while.
Yes.
So I'm curious, with regionalization, we're here in the room, I don't know what percentage are here in Oakland County versus Wayne versus Macomb, but this is a pretty broad-based community here that we're in. the talk of region working together. You've been in this game for a while. How do you see the efforts to coordinate and cooperate on things like the draft and whatever? Is there enough of that going on? Do you see room for improvement?
Well, it's starting to get better. It was terrible, as you probably all know, for decades. And the rhetoric going both ways was terrible. But we have to work as a region, especially when it comes to things like mass transportation and all of that. I mean, Detroit has had numerous attempts at it, going back like 100 years, and has failed at it. Most of these systems are funded by the federal government, but you have to have a regional transportation authority, which we're finally having now. And you got to get together to make your pitch to the feds so they can fund these things. Now, other cities, multiple cities have done that successfully, but we have not in Detroit. The reason we put the Q line in was for two reasons. Number one, it was just to make sure we could move people in downtown, because that's real important. But the main reason was to prove to the feds that we could get something done. Look, we did this 3.5 mile lane, all privately funded, mostly privately funded, so we can do it. And they were happy about that. But the more groups that get behind doing a regional system, the more chance we have of the feds funding it. And just think about how great that would be if you had lines going to Metro Airport, up Woodward all the way to Pontiac, and then going west, and then going east. I mean, it would be unreal, it would be a different city. And again, it'd give us the ability to attract more talent here. These kids, they don't want to drive cars. They'll take a bike or they'll take a train. They may take a bus. But I think a bike and train are their main ways. Maybe walking, they'd like that too. They brag about not having cars, actually. Go ahead and ask any 21-year-old, what car do you drive? And they look at you like you're nuts. I mean, that's too bad here because we sell them all. But.
Do you see us having that? I mean, what do you think it will take to make that happen? I mean, we've been talking about this, as you mentioned, for decades. Do you see any particular momentum to aggressively pursue this mass regional issue here?
Well, now that this regional transportation authority looks like it's going to come together, that's going to change it a lot. Because they're going to serve as the central agency that's going to recruit everybody else to get behind it and make it happen. There really was no other place for it. So that's a big thing, Carol, and I think getting the PR, like you guys writing some positive, good articles on it would help. I mean, you asked.
Oh, so let me ask this then. So we got the NFL draft. We last had the Super Bowl in 2006 in Detroit, and I know there's some conversation about maybe trying to bring it back. Do you think, and one of the things we hear about is hotel space. Mass transit is one issue, but the lack of hotel space. Do you think we're in the position now to actively go after a Super Bowl or one of the presidential conventions for the Republicans or Democrats or bigger events like that? Do you think we're positioned now for this?
Yes, I do. I think we are much better than we were, and I think that Detroit Sports Commission and others are planning to pitch the Super Bowl again and the NCAA Final Four, which was here last in 2009. So, I mean, we can now compete with all these other cities. We really can. And there's a lot more hotel space. I just told you about 2 hotels.
Yep.
But there's others that are building hotels. There's way more hotel space than there was. I don't know the exact rooms, but there's way more. And when you have a Super Bowl, they count the suburban hotels as well.
Yeah.
They don't expect them all to be in one city downtown. And there's a lot more hotel rooms.
Talk about your view of Detroit and the region together, the suburbs. I mean, a lot of times it's like in the past there was a divide, it seemed like. But now, how do you view the city versus the outlying metro areas?
Well, I think it's getting better, as I mentioned. And I think, transportation is one thing to work on. There's probably a bunch of things that we can work on together, and we should. And I think when you get the commissioners of Oakland County, Macomb County, and what am I missing? Wayne County together, and the mayor of the mayor of Detroit together, and you get them talking about the priorities, I think it's always better to have collaboration. And there's a lot of things. Crime can be worked on. You were talking about the school shootings. I'm sure there's things we can do together to try to help put in things that prevent that from happening again. The more people working on more things, the better off you are. So, but it's got to be led from the politicians who are leading these areas.
You own the NBA Cleveland Cavaliers. It's a relatively new season. How is it going? And what do you expect for your
It's going
season?
better. This is our third or fourth year in a row we're increasing our win percentage, which is good. We're probably about, you know, the old commissioner of the NBA had told me he's going to write a book called One Player Away, because every owner always tells him we're one player away. So maybe I should say that, we're one player away. But I think, you know, we are probably one or two players away, but we made the playoffs last year, and we made the play-in the year before. We're hoping to make the playoffs again this year. It's only a 2.5-hour drive, by the way. So,
And when they put in that high-speed rail, they'll get us there quickly, right?
yeah, if we do one under Lake Erie, that'd be quick.
Curious, your quick thoughts here. There's reports about Mark Cuban, who owns the Mavs, the Dallas Mavericks, selling the team, and he just bailed out of doing Shark Tank, potentially running for president. So curious on your end, with all the things that you've done in your life, did you ever think about politics as a potential career?
I really have not, because I want to get stuff done. You know, and everybody makes fun of all politicians. There are some great ones. I mean, the mayor of Detroit's doing a great job. The governor, I think, is doing a very good job. So, and that hasn't been in place how many years where the governor and the mayor, they work together. The previous mayor or the previous governor worked great with the mayor too of Detroit. And there was always a negative situation there, but that hasn't happened anymore, or isn't the case anymore. So, does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
Do you think that's because of the economy when you're in such tough straits? We had economic downturn, 2008, 2009, the pandemic hit coming out of this. Has this recalibrated the nature of the relations between the city suburbs as a result of this? Everybody's in a tough situation and coming out of it still.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an economy thing. I think Detroit, if you go back, we've always had issues. It was, and you saw that this year too, it was workers versus management. It was suburbs versus city. It was east side versus west side. They had race relation issues. You know, there's just so many groups that were not in line in the city and the suburbs. I think that's just got to change, and it's starting to change now, but I think we need more and more people on that bandwagon. I don't know if I have all the solutions on how to do it, but I think that we come out of a conflicted region, conflicted people and conflicted groups, and I think that doing things together is going to help a lot. I mean, bringing that draft to Detroit was a collaborating effort between city, suburbs, community groups, the Detroit Sports Commission, the Lions. Cleveland Browns stayed out of that, so don't worry about that. Although they just had it there 2 years ago, and it was pretty successful.
I live in a house where the television sets on a sporting event virtually every night, whether I want to watch it or not. But the other night there was an NBA game on with guys playing on this really cool, crazy-looking court, which I learned was an in-season tournament that ends in Vegas in December. Your thoughts of this concept?
Carol, you're going deep on the NBA.
I'm going deep.
Maybe you should apply to ESPN. Well, the NBA did this in-season tournament this year, so the semifinals and finals we played in Vegas, but it was a one-game elimination, which we were eliminated pretty early. But they put these fancy decals on the courts. That's what you're talking about. We always play around with our courts, too, in our uniforms, trying to bring more life to the arena, game operations. But I think it's been successful. I think it's brought more viewers, and I think people like it. And, you know, they got that from the soccer leagues in Europe that do that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good thing to be innovative in the NBA because you always want to evolve and have new things going on. And the WNBA is doing pretty well, too. More people talk about that league now than I've heard in the last several years. They've got some great talent in that league. We don't have a team in Detroit or Cleveland in the WNBA, so that's something we should probably think about.
You're in a position to do something? Are you thinking about it?
Yeah, but I thought somebody in this room would want to think about it.
we've been talking about talent needs. You've talked a little bit about that throughout this. It's a huge issue. Young people going to school here, leaving Chicago or California, what have you, and obviously having more things to do here, but if there is a collective way to do some sort of a program or something, I know Hillary Doe is here somewhere from the state, is a new job of trying to help boost population, and one way is bringing more young people here, bringing more families here and so forth. Is there anything else that you think we should be doing as a community together, or companies, or is it our political leaders, how to increase all of this?
Well, I think it's everybody's, I've been saying this whole talk, I think it's everybody doing their part. And I do think it's the #1 issue, is retaining and attracting young talent to this area. It's already starting to change. I mean, we've got kids from California, New York, Chicago. I mean, not like hundreds of them, but there's examples and examples. So I think that having big intern programs is really helpful too. We've got a ton of kids from DPS that are interns in our businesses, and they're great talents too. So we got to recruit internally in the city as well as in the suburbs and keep the kids coming out of college here.
You are a ultra successful entrepreneur, and I know when I talk to people, you'd think I just show up here and have questions, but I talk to a lot of people about when I'm talking to somebody like you and say, what would you ask in talking to people? Many entrepreneurs I talked to wanted me to ask you this question. I won't put a name to it, but it's a cumulative type question, and that's this. You've had many successes in your career with things that you've done. What do you do when you have failures, and how do you get past it?
Well, I think you got to learn from your failures. I mean, that's kind of cliche, but it's really not about failing or succeeding immediately. It's about, if you succeed, that's great. If you fail, what did you learn? You really get in trouble when you're frozen or you don't make decisions. And it's important to have a culture and a philosophy, which you guys are getting. I think you got free editions of these. This is our This is our culture book. Were these on the chairs? Yes. So every one of our people goes through an all-day session on this with me and other leaders. And it's called our Isms in Action, and it's 20 sort of cutesy sayings, but we follow them. And I encourage you to read it 2 or 3 times. I think you'll enjoy it. And normally they're $19.99 plus shipping and handling. So they're free. I think there's another book you got too on Detroit that was put together by the good people at Bedrock. I think you want to look through there. You know, another interesting thing that's happened, it wasn't your question exactly, but in the last 120 days, Bedrock's recruited like 35 different retailers to join the retailers in Detroit that are there now. We're going to have I forgot the names. I do have it with me though.
Is it in there?
I have my handy dandy little piece of paper here. If I can see, hold on. Let's give you some names, just a handful of names. This isn't all of them, of new retailers we've got coming in. We mentioned Gilly's Bar. We have the Lip Bar. You like that?
Yes.
Not sure what that is.
She was on Shark Tank. They didn't buy it.
What does she sell?
Lipstick.
Lips? Lipstick, okay. Well, I see people with new lips all the time. So. Levi's is opening up a store. We got Lego coming in. We've got, some of these you may know. Free People, I don't know what that is. We've got Easy Peasy. We're getting close on Apple, but we're not there yet, so don't print that. There's a place called Elo Yoga, which I think is closed, right? It's not yoga itself. There's a store called Good Nil. I don't know what that is. There's the Love Sack. I don't want to ask about that. Lululemon is expanding their store that's in Detroit already. There's a beauty place called Lush.
Yes.
Sounds like a bar to me. There's Madewell. There's Savage and Fenty. I think that's that singer's place. Rihanna, right?
Yep.
Sonny's. fashion retail. And by the way, they're, in the book you have, I think they're all on a map that you can see where they're at. But Detroit's gonna have is starting, Woodward Avenue will be equivalent to going to a regional mall because there's so many of these retailers there. And restaurants, as you probably all know. A lot of great restaurants happening all over Detroit.
You have paved a path and helped to bring other businesses here and entrepreneurs and big companies and little companies coming here. What do you see ahead for Detroit, say, in 5 or 10 years from now? What do you envision it compared to how it is today?
I just we keep going on the roads we're going now. We keep recruiting retailers, office building tenants, people to live here. We talked about the kids. There's thousands and thousands of college kids that come out now and stay in Detroit. I see that happening. That'll change everything. The region works better together as we attract more events. Mass transportation gets put in place. The crime rate continues to decline, which has been declining for years and years.
You want to blame the media for that too?
Well, it depends.
So we have students from Cass Tech here. Raise your hands back there, young folks. And Dan, each one of these young folks wants to become an entrepreneur. Apparently there was lines of people wanting to be here today to hear from you. They were so excited to hear what you were saying about all of this. What words of advice would you give these young folks before they begin their professional journey into the not too distant future when they get out of high school and college?
Well, first of all, we do have a lot of students that work. They're not students anymore, but a lot of people that have come out of Cass Tech that are working in our organization right now. Great high school. And I think if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to be curious. So you got to ask a lot of questions to a lot of people. And most people will meet with you. Don't be afraid to call up entrepreneurs and see if you can meet with them, because I think most of them will. And I think you can learn a lot from there. But read as much as you can read. Read our isms book, that'll be helpful. And don't be afraid to fail. If you're an entrepreneur and you're afraid to fail, you're gonna really get in trouble. I mean, I think most entrepreneurs will tell you they failed a lot. Even in the company that they're successful in, they failed a lot. So don't be afraid to fail. And just take a step. First step's harder than the second step. Each step gets a lot easier, so keep going. And the idea is not as important as your resolve to make that idea into reality. We used to look at it this way: do you invest in the horse or do you invest in the jockey? I'm a jockey guy. Let's say the horse is the idea, the jockey is the entrepreneur. I think that a great entrepreneur will figure it out. If it's not the business they're pitching you, they'll figure out another close business and make it happen. So I think most venture capital firms invest in the entrepreneur. I mean, the idea is secondary. I mean, the idea is important, but it's not as important as the man or woman who's running the show. So if you guys want to intern this summer, we'll hire you. We're all good.
You want to give me your phone number right now so they can call you?
I'll give you my email. It's
Okay.
easy. Okay? I have a very easy email. dangilbert@rocketcompanies.com. No underscores, no bullshit, just straight email. And if I don't return it, one of my assistants will, so just feel free to email me.
As we're sitting here, you're ultra successful, you're of a certain age. What piece of advice would you have given yourself? What do you wish you knew then that would have helped you along the way here, from when you started your career and the progress and all the things you've accomplished?
I think along the way I would have done a lot more due diligence in some of the partners that I had or in some of the key people. It's always hard to separate a relationship, whether you're a partner or whether it's a key person working for you. But when you do things like we do, and there's so many of them, there's just a sea of people, you're going to make mistakes, but I think those mistakes are costly. So you got to make sure that people believe in your culture and believe in what you're doing and aren't just chasing money. One of our isms is money follows, it doesn't lead. So we're not interested in people who are always talking about money. We're interested in people who have ideas and who want to make things happen, care about the community, and the money follows after that. I mean, God knows with the investments we made, the money's not going to be there right now. But we're willing to wait it out for years or a decade or more if we have to. Because we believe in the concept and believe in the idea.
As we're winding down here, you've talked about many different things. You have accomplished so much in so many different things. I mean, it's truly inspiring. Is there, and you've done a good job of selling things here today too, so expect those hotels to be booked like that.
We'll see how many emails I get.
That's right. Is there anything else you would like to say about anything we've talked about or whatever to kind of wind it down? You've got a lot of VIPs, people running companies and organizations here, a lot of influencers in the house. Anything you would want to say about anything here?
Well, one thing I didn't answer you on was Mark Cuban. I think that he made a great deal for himself in selling the majority interest in the Cavs, or in the Mavs. And I think that, I don't know why he's resigning from Shark Tank, because he did a good job with that, but president's another, that's pushing it a little.
Yeah.
I mean, I know him pretty well, and he's a great guy, but, you know, would he, I don't know if he'd have the patience, like most entrepreneurs, to be president. Plus, what it does to your family, you know, that's the problem. I think that some politics at the high end, I mean, how many people want to subject their families and themselves to that situation? It's so brutal. A lot of it in the media, Carol, but that's what they do.
This is true. I mean, it's tough. It's tough being a politician. You couldn't pay me enough. And I applaud people who do because of the community activism, things that, who go in there with good hearts and good intentions.
Yes. And
So
I think you have to be 80 to run for president now, don't you?
you have time to think about it then, Dan. It's not too late.
So get back to me then, okay?
Okay. Dan Gilbert, I can't thank you enough for taking time to spend it with us this morning, sharing your thoughts about a variety of things, giving us updates on things. The Motor City has been so near and dear in everything that you're doing. To those of us born and raised here on the east side. East side here, all right, east side, there we go. West Siders? Okay, and all you suburbanites? So we really appreciate you taking time. This has been incredible, and I think you're such an influential voice here in our community who has done so much to help the community with your wife Jennifer and others, and continues to. So thank you so much for that. And
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
and
It's always great talking to you.
nice to talk with you too. Maybe we'll do it again. What do
How
you
come
think?
such few questions today?
Well, you know, I figure we just kind of go with the flow. It's cold. Everybody's, you know, their first cup of coffee haven't happened yet. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I want to thank you again.
Thank you.
All righty.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And before, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. I want to thank all of you in the room for being here. We'll have more to say about the next Breakfast Hub coming up soon. Watch your emails and what have you. Thank you again.